Athens, 5th century BC, a city in effervescence. The streets resonate with philosophical discussions, news of battles, and rumors of new plays to be performed at the great Dionysius. Democracy, still young, flourishes under the watchful eye of free citizens, but not all. It is the era of Pericles, Socrates, and also Sophocles and Euripides. The Peloponnesian War is already looming on the horizon. It is a world where politics are discussed in the public square and myths are represented on open stages. Here, at this intersection of history, philosophy, and spirituality, a phenomenon is born that will mark Western culture forever: Greek theatre. And no one better than Robert Garland, historian and expert on ancient life, to guide us on this journey through the origins of tragedy, comedy, and their resonance in the human soul, from 2,500 years ago to today. In the heart of Athens lives Diodorus, a free man in his 40s, an active citizen and a fervent defender of democracy. Son of a potter and heir to a small property, his life is deeply intertwined with the political and cultural pulse of the polis. He is not rich, but he is not poor either. His pride lies in his right to speak and vote in the assembly, in his training as a hoplite, and in something deeper, his passion for theatre. Diodorus is not a playwright, nor an actor, but he is a devoted spectator. Since he was young, he has looked forward to the Dionysius, the great festival in honor of the god Dionysus, protector of wine, ecstasy, and of course, theatre. For him, these celebrations are more than entertainment. They are a ritual, an exploration of the human soul, and a mirror of his society. Like many Athenians, he believes that a good tragedy can reveal truths that politics or philosophy cannot. Reach, his wife, Marine, lives next to Diodorus. Intelligent and observant, she knows the world through stories, rumors, and everyday life. He cannot attend the theatre like men, but he listens to every story he returns home. In her voice, tragedies are transformed into practical teachings, applied to domestic life, raising children, and surviving in a world ruled by men. Although the system does not recognize her as a citizen, her influence is subtle but profound. Diodorus and Myrene have 2 children, Antiphon, 15, an apprentice in a sculptor's workshop, and Melite, 13, who silently dreams of a wider world. Both grow up surrounded by mythical stories of heroes like Oedipus, Electra, or Heracles, and comedies that caricature politicians and gods alike. At home, myths are not just fiction. They are moral codes, warnings, tools for understanding the world. The family also has a slave, Timo, a Thracian with sharp eyes and calloused hands. He has been serving Diodorus for years, and although he does not have civil rights, his role within the house is essential. Timo listens, observes, learns. In silence, he develops a critical look at the discourses of freedom and justice that permeate Athenian culture. He knows that in tragic dramas, slaves are sometimes wiser than their masters. He himself is a privileged witness of the contradictions of the Greek world. Finally, there is Cleonte, a young actor in training, friend of Antiphon. He comes from a family of metics, resident foreigners, which prevents him from participating in politics but not in art. His dream is to be chosen to participate in one of the great works of the festival. His teacher has told him stories about the legendary Thespis, the first actor, the man who dared to step out of the chorus and speak with his own voice on stage. For Cleonte, acting is not only embodying characters, but also claiming a space in a society that still does not fully accept it. These characters, citizens, women, children, slaves, and foreigners, are a sample of the social mosaic that makes up Athens. Each one experiences theatre from a different angle, but they are all touched by its power. Greek theatre is not just a show, it is a tool of cohesion, reflection, and criticism. And it is also an opportunity to see, feel, and understand the conflicts of the human condition, embodied in words that centuries later continue to resonate. This is how this story begins, not only that of an art, but that of a civilization that used masks, choruses, and tragedies to talk about itself. The sun barely touches the horizon when Athens begins to wake up. The first lights of dawn turn the columns of the Parthenon gold, and the sound of footsteps and voices invades the stone streets. In Diodorus's house, the day begins with ritual. Before any food touches his lips, he approaches the small family altar dedicated to Hestia, goddess of the hearth. He burns a pinch of incense and murmurs a brief but heartfelt prayer for the health of his wife, for the virtue of his children, for the wisdom of the rulers, and for the success of the works he is about to witness at the Dionysius. Myrene is already awake, kneeling in front of the hearthfire. Like every morning, she checks the stored grains, kneads the bread, and organizes the maids. Although he does not set foot in the square or vote in the assembly, he knows how the world turns. In his mind, the balance of the home is as political as the speeches in the agora. Antiphon leaves early for the workshop, where he learns the art of sculpting marble. Although still young, he is already beginning to understand the importance of detail, form, and harmony. His teacher repeats daily that a sculptor not only represents the gods, he makes them present. Among tools and stone dust, Antiphon listens to talk about the theater festival. His teacher says that tragedies are like living sculptures. They model emotions, they chisel the collective consciousness. Melite, for her part, learns at home with Myrene. Read fragments of epic poems, practice embroidery with mythological motifs, and listen to stories that Myrene masterfully adapts. The stories that come from the stage, through her father's voice, become tools to interpret her world. Penelope's fidelity, Antigone's strength, Iphigenia's destiny. Timo, the slave, begins his day carrying water from the well. Although his work is physical, his mind is always awake. While working, he listens to the master's conversations, observes the gestures, the silences. During the breaks of the day, when Diodorus returns from the market, Timo allows himself to ask questions. Diodorus, curious by nature, does not deny him explanations. They talk about tragedies, about the themes that will be dealt with in the next works. The anger of Achilles, the guilt of Orestes, the arrogance of Creon. Timo listens and reflects. Why do the gods punish mortals so much? And why do so many protagonists fall due to excess pride? In the days before the Dionysius, the entire city is transformed. The streets are filled with artisans, actors, musicians, and choreographers rehearsing their steps. The theatre of Dionysus, on the southern slope of the Acropolis, prepares to receive thousands. 3 tragedies and 1 satirical drama per author will be performed there. The Archon Eponymos, one of the most important magistrates, has already chosen the poets and sponsors who will finance the shows, the chorigos. Being a chorigo is no small task. It is an act of liturgy, a way in which the rich demonstrate their commitment to the city, assuming the costs of costumes, choir training, and scenery. For them, it is a civic duty and a path to glory. The name of the victorious choir will be inscribed next to that of the poet and the main actor on a stone column. There is no greater honor. The rehearsals are intense. The actors, all men, memorize long poetic stretches, train their voices to resonate in the theater's huge open space, and practice wearing masks. These masks, with exaggerated features, not only project emotions, they allow a single actor to represent multiple characters, even gods or women. The choir, for its part, sings and dances in perfect synchronicity, acting as a collective conscience, as an intermediary between the characters and the audience. Cleonte, the young aspiring actor, lives these days intensely. He has landed a minor, but essential role. He doesn't talk much, but he will be on stage during one of Euripides' tragedies. Every night he practices his moves in front of a bronze mirror. For him, acting is not pretending. It is embodying the pain of the characters, taking the audience to a place beyond the everyday. He knows that this experience can change those who observe, and also perhaps himself. Greek theatre is the heart of a culture that questions itself. There are no realistic sets or special effects. What there is word, rhythm, silence, body. What there is catharsis. The audience is not just going to be entertained. They are going to face their own fears, their destiny, their humanity. And in the middle of that city that boils with preparation, among bakers, priests, sculptors, and slaves, everyone, in one way or another, prepares for the theatre experience. Because in Athens during those days, no one is just a spectator, everyone is part of the drama. At dawn on the first day of the great Dionysius, the bustle of Athens becomes a reverent murmur. The air smells of incense, wine, and road dust. The doors of the Theatre of Dionysus, at the foot of the Acropolis, open as citizens flow like a human river towards the stone steps. More than 15,000 souls congregate in a sacred space, half temple, half public square. Emotions are on the surface. Over the next few days, the darkest myths of your civilization will be confronted here, with the lights and shadows of the present. Diodorus has arrived early with Antiphon. They have gotten good seats thanks to Theoricon, a state fund that allows even the most humble to attend the theatre. For him, this festival is not leisure, it is civic duty, a public lesson in morals and politics. At his side, men from different social classes share watered wine and speculate about the works that will be presented. Some murmur that Sophocles has written something powerful, that young Euripides has returned with a provocative tragedy. Meanwhile, backstage, Cleonte trembles with emotion. His teacher, a veteran actor with a voice worn by the years, reminded him of the essential. Today you don't speak like yourself. Today you are the voice of a people, the body of an idea. Cleonte adjusts the mask of a Trojan messenger. His scene lasts no more than a few minutes, but he knows that every word counts. The first tragedy begins. Absolute silence falls over the crowd when the protagonist, the main actor, enters the scene with his solemn mask. The choir sings the prologue, telling how Agamemnon has sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to obtain favorable winds for Troy. The audience already knows the story, but that doesn't make it any less shocking. The verses resonate like lightning in the collective consciousness. Diodorus, like so many others, shifts in his seat as he listens to the hero's dilemmas. Is it fair to kill a daughter for the good of the country? Does duty towards the gods justify the inhuman? Greek theatre, as Robert Garland points out, does not provide easy answers. Rather, he throws questions like spears and lets each viewer carry them home. Between the tragedies, a satirical drama is performed, a burlesque comedy that parodies the same myths that made people cry minutes before. This mix, the sublime and the ridiculous, the divine and the absurd, is part of the Greek charm. The audience laughs as the actors, dressed as satyrs with giant phalluses, mock Apollo himself. It is an escape valve, but also a way to remember that even gods can be ridiculed. Myrene does not attend the theatre, but that same day she hears everything that happened from a neighbor whose husband has also gone. She reconstructs the scenes with precision, imagining the gestures, the silences, the words. Think about Iphigenia, her decision to accept death for the greater good, and what that means for a mother like her. Who decides what the common good is? What fate can impose itself on a mother's love? On the second day, it is presented Medea of Euripides. Cleonte has a small role, but he watches from the shadows the actress, a man actually, who plays Medea. With a deep voice and intense gaze, she tells how she has been betrayed by Jason, her husband, who abandons her for a younger princess. The decision that Medea will make, killing her own children as revenge, leaves the audience paralyzed. There is no redemption, there is no relief, only silence and the echo of the choir that sings the pain of the irreparable. Timo listens to the story from the outside wall of the theatre, where many slaves gather to hear what they can. Medea, a foreign woman, marginalized, betrayed, becomes a symbol. Timo doesn't know what is more disturbing, that a woman decides to kill her children, or that thousands of free men listen to her and instead of simply condemning her, try to understand her. The works advance and with them the debate. During the breaks the audience discusses. Not everyone agrees. Some see Medea as an aberration, others as a tragic figure, worthy of compassion. This is how Greek theatre works. It does not impose a morality, it proposes a mirror. And as Cleonte removes his mask and breathes at last with his own face, as Diodorus walks home with the verses still vivid in his mind, as Myrene serves dinner to her children and repeats Iphigenia's words, as Timo reflects silently under the moon, everyone has been transformed, because in Athens, in those days of theatre, no one is left untouched. Night falls on Athens, but the city is still awake. The lights of the oil lamps flicker in the houses like wandering stars, while families share bread and wine, commenting on what they saw at the theater. Unlike other forms of art, tragedies are not exhausted by applause. The words remain resonating like ancient echoes that seek a nest in consciences. The house of Diodorus is no exception. Gathered around the table, Myrene listens attentively to Diodorus's story. He doesn't dramatize, you don't need to do it. His description of Medea, of her final monologue, of the scene in which she emerges in a winged chariot, escaping human punishment, is enough to shudder. Antiphon asks in amazement, "Why did the gods let her go?" Melita, younger, watches silently, and Myrene, in a low voice, responds, "Because even the gods don't know what to do with such great pain." That night, in the marital bed, Diodorus and Myrene argue. Not about the work itself, but about what it has awakened in them. Reflective, Myrene wonders if Euripides hasn't written Medea to tell them something about their own society. What place does a woman without a voice, without a country, without power, occupy, but that of fury? Diodorus, uncomfortable, tries to defend traditional values, but something in him has moved. The figure of Medea does not easily fit into its moral categories. That ambiguity baffles him and attracts him. In another part of the city, Cleonte, exhausted after his second day on stage, walks with his teacher. He asks him, "What did you see in the eyes of the public?" Cleonte responds, "Fear and something else. Understanding." The teacher nods. "That's catharsis," he says. "Fear's not just emotion, it's purification. A city that cries together, thinks together." Timo, for his part, has begun collecting fragments, not from papyrus, but from memory. He repeats in a low voice the verses that he has heard, phrases from Oedipus, Medea, Cassandra. He connects them to the lives he knows, his own other slaves, Myrene's. He sees in these tragedies something more than entertainment, a hidden code, a language that says what no one dares to say out loud. He who does not have freedom begins to build a way of thinking that he does. During the following days, the discussions intensify in the agora. Some citizens openly criticize Euripides. They accuse him of weakening civic values, of showing women as monsters and the gods as indifferent. Others defend it. They say it has shown what we really are, not what we pretend to be. Aristophanes, the great playwright, even writes a satire mocking Euripides, presenting him as a shabby-robed sophist who only seeks to corrupt the young. But the criticism does not stop the wave that has been unleashed. In schools, young people recite tragic monologues along with Homeric hymns. At symposia, men discuss whether divine will justifies human injustice. And in the houses, women begin to see their own shadows reflected in the female figures that step on the stage with words that burn. Robert Garland, analyzing this dynamic, reminds us that Greek theater was more than a mirror. It was a pedagogical tool. In a society where knowledge was transmitted mainly orally, theater becomes a book, a sermon, a forum. Through stories of fallen heroes, of capricious gods, of mortals trapped between destiny and decision, the Athenians were educated in the complexity of their own time, and not all viewers were the same. While free citizens attended the theater with guaranteed access, metics, resident foreigners like Cleonte's family, experienced it as an aspiration. For them, tragedies were also a symbolic gateway to the soul of Athens, a way to belong without, officially being part slaves, of course, were excluded from official space. But like Timo, many managed to witness part of the spectacle from the sidelines, and these porous margins become a diffuse border between exclusion and participation. The voice of Greek theater, in its most beautiful contradiction, manages to transcend the social limits that Athens itself imposes. Diodorus begins to see that. One afternoon, in a casual conversation with Timo, he asks him what he thinks about the works. Timo, prudent, responds with a quote, "The wisest men are those who know that they know nothing." Diodorus recognizes Socrates' words, but dares not ask how he learned them. He just nods, and in that silent gesture, something between master and slave transforms. The theater has done its job. The last day of the Dionysius has arrived, and with it the final performance. Over the past few days, hearts have been opened, social masks slightly lifted, and the city has looked at itself with new eyes. But today, the tension is different. There is a mix of expectation and solemnity. A trilogy of tragedies signed by Sophocles is represented. The central work is Antigone, Diodorus, and Antiphon sit in the crowd. The initial silence is absolute, as if the very stone of the theatre was holding its breath. Antigone appears, determined to bury her brother Polynices, who fell in battle and was declared a traitor by the new king, Creon. The young woman disobeys the law of the state out of respect for divine law. The city watches, paralyzed. Antigone's words span generations. "I was not born to share hate, but love." Diodorus feels the vertigo of the questions he does not want to ask himself. What happens when the law is unjust? Who decides when civic duty becomes moral betrayal? He looks at his son and sees him absorbed, assimilating that tension between obedience and conscience. The young Antiphon does not know it, but that day, in the theatre, a seed is sown in him. Perhaps one day, remembering Antigone, he will make a decision that his father never dared to make. Creon, the king, is the reflection of a city that hardens itself to protect itself. He is not evil, he is rational, he is structured, he is legalistic. And precisely for that reason, his fall is more tragic. The city realizes with a chill that tragedy does not need villains. Just human decisions faced with impossible circumstances. On the margins of the theatre, Cleonte watches from behind the stage. He is no longer acting. Today he has no paper, but he has asked his teacher to be there. Watching your mentor play, Creon is like watching a mountain crumble. And at the moment when Creon, broken by the loss of his son and his wife, exclaims that he has learned the truth too late, Cleonte cries. Not because of the character, but because he understands that theatre is also that, a warning. In Diodorus's house at dusk, Antigone's words continue to float in the air. Myrene has heard every scene, every dilemma from the neighbors. Melite repeats phrases with the passion of someone who has understood something new. Myrene doesn't stop her. Inside, something tells him that that feminine voice, which does not ask permission to do what he believes is right, represents a breakup, a before and after. And it is precisely in that after where the unexpected twist occurs. That same night, Diodorus receives some acquaintances from the assembly at home. Between the wine and the comments on the works, the topic of women and their place in the city arises. One of the men says, laughing, "Antigone is a warning. If we let our wives talk too much, they will end up challenging us as queens." Diodorus smiles but does not laugh. Then he looks at Myrene, who is watching from the kitchen silently. That night, privately, Myrene asks him, "Do you think Antigone was wrong?" Diodorus answers without looking, "I don't know, I think he did what he had to." There is a long silence. For the first time in years, they don't look at each other as husband and wife, but as citizens, as people who inhabit the same city, the same moral world. Timo listens to part of the conversation from the patio, while washing the dishes for the day. He doesn't say anything, but within him, Antigone has also spoken. Who decides what is right? Who has the right to be heard? What if a slave acted with the same dignity as Antigone? The next morning, Timo does something unprecedented. Finding Melite repeating a phrase from the tragedy, he stops and offers her another, completing the verse. The girl looks at him surprised. "Do you know the work?" Timo smiles and responds, "I don't just know her, I understand her." In the distance, Cleonte has made a decision too. He will leave the workshop for a while. He will travel to Delphi, perhaps to Epidaurus. He wants to study with other actors, other poets. He has felt that theatre is not just art, it is transformation, not only for the public, but for him. He doesn't just want to act. He wants to write. The Athens after the Dionysius is no longer the same. The city has been exposed to the extremes of the human soul, to compassion for enemies, to the pain of justice imposed, to the madness of blind power. The theatre has sown ideas like blades, sharp, deep, impossible to remove. And if tyrants fear anything, it is precisely that, a people that thinks out loud. Night falls over Athens. In the streets, the bustle has faded. In the houses, only murmurs and burning embers remain. Diodorus watches his family sleep. Myrene dreams quietly. Antiphon takes a deep breath. Melite hugs a bolt of cloth as if it were a holy book. Timo, in the corner where he sleeps, has his eyes open. The echo of Antigone, Medea, Oedipus, and Cassandra does not fade away. Greek theatre was not just a show. It was a silent revolution, a school of the soul, a wound exposed in public to heal collectively. Robert Garland explains it well. The cultural impact of Greek theatre was and is immense because by showing the worst and the best of us, it forces us to choose. Who do we want to be? What stories do we decide to repeat? Athens sleeps, but his legacy, awake, still speaks to us, and we, centuries later, continue listening.